Good morning. I believe we are now live. Welcome back for another Job Train How talent session. This one's proved really popular, so it's so good to see so many of you this morning. What a week it's been. No sooner as we come out of lockdown, there's a nationwide fuel shortage and we've all got to stay local. The irony is not lost on me, but it's frustrating. But we can delve away from all of that this morning and we can dig deep into the world of recruitment and talent acquisition. I think over the last 18 months, a lot of us have been, you know, the phrase, we're all in the same storm, but in different boats. It's been very much like that. And I think this morning's session is a really good opportunity to get some real insight into what's been happening right across the world of recruitment and talent acquisition. And quite frankly, there's nobody better than the firm to share that level of insight. They are a fantastic membership organisation and they've got a huge level of engagement. And as a result of that, a unique view on everything that's going on in the world of TA and recruitment. So big thanks to Anna Milbank for joining me this morning for today's session. Now we should be live on LinkedIn. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Just shove something in the chat to make sure that my sound's coming through okay. And we'll get started shortly. So I've loved running these webinars, but I haven't half missed in-person events. Anna ran one yesterday with the firm at Manchester, which we'll probably talk about in a moment. We've got our very first live in-person event a week today. That's IHR Manchester live event. I hope you'll be able to come and join us. We'll be sharing lots of insight on our stand. We've produced an amazing guide on how to choose an applicant tracking system, so we'll be sharing that. And even more exciting, I'm running my very first live Job Train How talent session, a panel discussion about 12:15 on the day. So I've got some super panel members and I hope you'll be able to join me for that. But let's get on with the show. I'm going to bring Anna on. This is it's going to be a bit strange for me actually because I've probably known Anna for about, I'm guessing about 8 years. But we're also really good friends. So this is going to be a little bit weird interviewing a friend on here. We probably speak every week. But I'm going to invite her on now and let's get the show on the road. Anna, are you there? Hopefully.
I'm here. Great.
How are you? It's such a
I get so nervous at that part, thinking, please don't let me down, technology. Please work. So
Anna, you're a pro. You're on Recruiting Brain Food. And for anybody who doesn't know Recruiting Brain Food, it's like the biggest webinar in recruitment and talent acquisition in the world, pretty much, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get in there for the first time. I don't know what happened with the technology, but I tried to get in. They're like, where have you gone? I was like, where have I gone? Anyone who knows me knows that I do find technology quite stressful. So I'm glad I'm here, and I will try not to touch anything so that I don't mess it all up. Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's a pleasure. It does feel a little bit weird because we're also friends. So yeah. But anyway, you're here in your professional capacity today.
Of course.
Do you want to just share everybody a little bit about you and then explain a little bit for those that aren't familiar with the firm, a bit about what you do?
Yes, of course. So I'm Anna Milbank. I'm the partnership director and co-owner of the firm. And we are a membership organisation, as Giles mentioned. We started our life on LinkedIn as a LinkedIn group back in 2007, I believe. And then in 2009, we became the company that we are today. And then we've just grown from there. I think it must have been about 5 years ago. We created and launched our platform, our website. And then we redid that about 3 years ago. And we're currently actually going through the process of updating the website as we speak. So really exciting time for us. So we see ourselves as the go-to hub for all things TA and in-house recruitment, and our core values really and our goals are to develop, connect, support and inspire all those working in TA. And there's never been a time that's been needed more, I think, than the last 18 months.
Yeah, definitely. So how do you go about that in terms of inspiring, developing, connecting?
Yeah, I mean, everything we do links to our pillars. So the Inspire pillar is very much the firm awards, really looking to recognise and inspire what everybody has been doing in the world of TA. We support everybody by the events that we run, like you mentioned yesterday, the Manchester conference. And then we've had lots of online events and virtual events that we kicked off last year. Actually, we held off for a bit. And then we kicked off with an event in partnership with AstraZeneca, our Connect 2020 it was called, which was purely for TA. No suppliers there, I'm afraid. But that was really a good sort of way for us to sort of put our foot in the water and see what the appetite was like, what worked, what didn't work. And then from there, we ended up deciding to really support those who'd been furloughed and made redundant in the TA world. So we did a load of virtual roundtable to support those people at that time. So I think this time last year, it was incredibly stressful in so many different ways, but we really wanted to show our support to those people. So we held a number of virtual roundtables to support those. And lots of the TA world were, they found themselves picking fruit in in Kent. Heads of TA suddenly were off picking fruit and rocket. So
it's crazy, isn't it? Last year there was like so many people that are out of work, and now from what I hear in the industry, people are actually really struggling to hire really strong TA professionals now, and pretty much everybody that was displaced has now found new roles.
Yeah, I think if yesterday was anything to go by, I think the sort of struggle for finding talent and within TA as well is mega. But we've got the resource library as well, where the recruiters can access all of our content. So we've got lots of practical templates, policies, procedures, RFPs, RFIs, you name it. You can go into there, take off our logo, stick your logo on. So you've got all your policies there. And then we do lots of insight and research as well, which obviously I'm going to touch on later today in our conversation. But we do a piece of bi-monthly research on a topic that our members have asked us to delve into more. And obviously Job Train are very kindly sponsoring our candidate experience insight report, which we are just about to launch. So stay tuned for that. And we're currently updating our D&I one as well. This year we've done an EVP and employer branding one. Insight report, which can be found on our platform, as well as the data and metrics. So we're constantly trying to provide insight and information to the members to help support them in their roles, because I think whilst they're so busy, the day job at the moment has become absolutely manic for them. I think they're still, we still need to make sure that we're supporting them in the other elements of their roles as well.
Yeah, I mean, so much has changed in the last 18 months from, suddenly all going home, then a lot of people being displaced, and now suddenly everybody is back sort of full steam, but there's a whole new set of challenges, and that's something we'll dig into as part of this chat this morning. Yeah. But tell me about yesterday's event. So obviously, we started this webinar in lockdown really to be able to share a bit of knowledge with people, a bit of insight and stuff, because when I was a frustrated speaker, I had events planned with you. In fact, the last ever speaking slot live event I did was with you guys, and it was literally about a week before we were all sent home, which is just crazy. In fact, it's the last time I even saw you properly.
I know.
I can't believe all this time's passed.
I know. I said that yesterday. I was like, my God, the last time that we were at an event in person was it was the 4th of March. It's the date I always remember. And it was just amazing feedback yesterday, to be honest with you. We were really nervous because with COVID, we didn't know whether people were going to be having an appetite to going to events. So there was a lot. It's always quite nervous putting on an event, but actually yesterday there was a lot of trepidation about how it was going to run, but it's past all our expectations. I mean, we just overwhelmed really by the attendees. Everyone, there was a buzz. Everyone was so excited to be back together. We had lots of COVID protocols in place. We had a green wristband if you're happy to shake hands or hug, and then a red if not. And it was interesting. The people that chose the red wristbands were those that had coughs and colds. And I thought, how considerate is that?
Wow.
Back in the old days, you just would have gone straight in and just probably coughed next to the person you're sitting next to. So that was really good. It was, and lots of insight. I think everyone was just so pleased to be actually able to speak to their peers. And I think that's what the firm really promotes, is that real peer-to-peer interaction, so that I think they know, that, you're not the only person dealing with those challenges at that time, and other people are going through the same things. And then it was really problem solving. How can we find solutions to the issues? What's keeping you awake at night, and how can we then run through? And everybody was so happy and willing to share their sort of thoughts and what they're trialing and how they're looking at things differently. And I'll talk you through those later. But it was amazing actually to be back in person, and can't wait for the next one. So it was good.
Oh, brilliant. I heard you even had to get extra chairs yesterday because more
we
people turned up.
I mean, literally, it's like a dream come true. We had to get like 10 extra chairs, and like the venue hadn't got enough tables. We had to get the half moon table. I'm sorry for anyone who had to sit on that at the back, but no, what a brilliant problem to have. And it was, I think I mentioned this to you earlier. It was sort of almost slightly emotional because, it's been such a sort of tough time. So actually to see everybody there, raring to go and wanting to kind of, network with each other was, it was just awesome.
So cool. Makes me feel quite emotional as well, but there we go. I mean, I can only imagine everybody was only too glad to get together and probably to share one another's experience of the last 18 months and what they've gone through. But in lieu of being able to do a physical event this morning, we're doing a webinar.
Yeah.
Let's dig into some of that stuff, because I know that you're in a really unique position to understand what's going on right across different sectors and stuff in the world of recruitment. So perhaps if we start with some of the main challenges patterns that you've seen right across TA and recruitment over the last 18 months, what's been the real struggle for people?
Excuse me, I've got some notes here which I'll be referring to, just so I can get my stats right. If I talk to you about, we do the annual membership survey. So the annual membership survey is actually live for this year at the moment, and hopefully Emma's going to pop the link in for anybody who has joined us who could take part in that, because this is the 11th year we've run the annual membership survey. Wow. And it's still our most downloaded piece of research that we do. And it's still live. So we've taken some snippets out from where we are today. But if I just take it back to the 2020-2021 survey that we did, the top 3 priorities for the first time ever, actually, it was D&I. So the top strategic, and I can never say that word, priorities for 2021 were D&I. So 50% of respondents said that was their number 1 priority. And for this year, 80% of companies are working on their DE&I now, as it's known, initiatives. So, they're looking to really upskill their existing TA teams and their hiring managers as well. And that's, I think, where we've been able to hopefully help, because we run our hiring manager training. We've got the recorded modules, and then we have the live training as well. And then we also have the TA training as well with the firms. So we've been able to help with that. And I think, that has been, yesterday was a big discussion topic as well. I think people are really talking about upskilling their existing teams and really holding on to their top talent.
And is that their teams within TA, but also hiring managers? Because I'm guessing that as we all went remote, I mean, normally, I guess as a recruiter, you probably might have an opportunity to sit down with a hiring manager as soon as you identify they've got a need, have a briefing session, all the rest of it, brief them before interviews, make sure that candidate experience and EVP experience is consistent right the way through the process. But then suddenly you're working remotely, so that must be quite a challenge. Is that what you've heard?
Yeah, I think it's been a real challenge. And I think the recruiters have been really frustrated because they have set their stall out and done what they need to do and get the candidates in front of the hiring managers. And then perhaps at that stage, it doesn't quite go according to plan. I think that's where the whole topic of unconscious bias really comes in. And we talked about this yesterday, that, people's backgrounds, are you looking at their background thinking, oh, what's that lamp like? Look at that dodgy picture Anna's got behind her of a horse because she couldn't find anything else to put in that room. It's become a lot more difficult. There's 2 schools of thought we had yesterday. One with a candidate saying, oh, it was amazing. I felt I performed so much better on the online video interview. It was brilliant. I felt so much more comfortable because I was at home rather than in the room with the interviewer. And then you have the other side where somebody said, oh my gosh, it was horrendous. I completely messed it up. I know that I'd been there and I'd sort of been able to sort of create that rapport in the room. I would have done so much better. So I think it's been really challenging for the recruiters. And it's been challenging for the line managers as well, because they're suddenly, doing an interview online. They need to remember everything that they need to remember too. So I think there's been an educational piece.
For sure. I think it's one thing sat on Teams with your colleagues and then conducting an interview like this way, where you're perhaps just staring into a camera or a little white dot. It doesn't come naturally to any one of us. Certainly for some hiring managers that perhaps aren't used to being on Teams, perhaps they don't have that kind of role. I guess there's an awful lot of upskilling required there. But you mentioned about upskilling for TA teams themselves and also retaining talent. What are the themes there?
So I think a lot of people I think there's a real struggle for attracting people into their teams. I think the requirements in the recruitment team seem to be changing as well in terms of what they're doing. Everybody's now got to think completely differently about how to attract. And that was yesterday the number 1. We do a word cloud at the firm day. So everybody puts into Mentimeter what's keeping them awake at night, what's their biggest challenge. And the biggest one yesterday was the candidate attraction piece. And actually counter offers came up as well. So it's how's everybody going around that, getting around that. So upskilling their teams, upskilling their TA teams, making sure that they're looking about their talent from within and how can they use the current talent that they've got in their businesses as well. But then also looking outside the box too, saying what are transferable skills? You know, what's the point if somebody's moving over from, for example, cabin crew into a call center role? You know, those are very transferable skills, but do you need the CV to be able to recruit that person? You know, what are we assessing on? And there was a lot of chat about assessing for potential yesterday. And I think that we've run a couple of sessions this year, some of our virtual roundtables on that topic too. And I think that's been, you know, what people are talking about, what they're wanting to look into, and how they can attract people into their businesses and have brand ambassadors and really focusing on their EVP and employer brand. Whereas before it was always important, but now I think whilst people are working from home, it's become even more so.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, was it last week, the week before? Data came out saying there's 1 million live vacancies, and all I hear across the industry is that people are really struggling in terms of candidate flow,
skill shortage,
and candidate engagement. Absolutely. So, has anybody shared any inventive or creative ideas around there? You mentioned obviously the importance of having a really strong, consistent candidate experience. The EVP really shines through, so really giving people a reason why they would want to join an organisation. But in terms of actually just getting hold of and reaching people in the first place, have there been any sort of particular suggestions around that?
If I knew that, I would be. I tell you what, I would be off somewhere else. No, I mean, I think everybody's got lots of different techniques that they are trying, and I think. In the old-fashioned job board way, people were talking about how that's it's not perhaps working as much, and I think it's that whole interaction at an earlier stage. So going to the schools and colleges, the early talent, really engaging with them at an earlier stage as well. And I think people were talking about being creative in their thinking and thinking outside the box, and not just recruiting for technical skills and not just recruiting purely on what the job spec says, what other people could do that job that perhaps it's not on their current CV at that time.
Yeah, you mentioned brand ambassadors too. So I guess it's like fishing with the fish are really. So in terms of your target candidate audience, where do they sit, where do they live, and how can we best reach them with our messaging? And brand ambassadors is actually a really strong way of doing that. Just for anybody that isn't here, what is a brand ambassador? And
I think the people who are working for your company, who are doing a good, who are enjoying it and doing a good job, and a good example of your culture, it's them using their influence to the external market, and people who. Somebody was saying yesterday that they were recruiting for a role, and every candidate they put forward, the line manager would say no, not good enough, not quite sure about it. It turned out that the person in that role had actually been more successful than the line manager. And so they were kind of worried about bringing people in that were better than them. And I think that is an extraordinary view, because why would you not want to bring somebody who was an A player? Yeah,
it does happen quite a lot. I mean, ideally what we want to try and do is hire people that are better than you, but not everybody shares that view. So in terms of challenges, we talked about candidate short market, upskilling, hiring managers, training, consistency, engagement, that kind of thing. Is there anything else that has been a particular challenge over the last 18 months?
Yeah, I think on the EVP side, it was some stats for you. 27% of people felt that their EVP doesn't currently reflect their organisation.
And has that changed over the last 18 months, do you think? Or
Yes, it has. Yeah. It's definitely changed. And it has gone down, actually. It's gone down slightly this year by a few percent. Although this year, 29% still don't have an EVP in place. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
And 33% this year have got separate employer branding resource in their teams, which is up from 38%. So people are really realising that need for their EVP, which then sits alongside having those brand ambassadors. And I think there was a lot of talk yesterday about onboarding as well. So, who's in charge of the onboarding process? How are you going to engage those candidates? Because counter offers was really, I think it was like one of the largest words in the word cloud. And how actually are you going to get those people from offer acceptance to land there on day one, because I don't know about you, but we're hearing so much that people are taking roles because they're so desperate. They've been so worried about not having a job. So they take a job and they accept it. And then a couple of weeks later, they're like, actually, I've been offered something else.
It's classic. Yeah, it's classic. There always used to be, I think it was like the stats, and these are out of date now because it's sort of pre-COVID. The stats are something like 15% churn on people that had accepted offers and then found a job somewhere else. And I'm not going to talk loads about Job Train, but it's one of the reasons why we created what we call within Job Train a green room. So you get all the compliancy stuff out of the way, your right to work checks, your contracts, forms and all the rest of it. But then there's almost like a black hole. And that compliance bit is only one small bit. You've really got to consider how you're communicating with new hires before you join them. How are you giving them a sense of connection with your organisation, also conveying the culture. And that's where you don't, obviously, we're going to talk about green and, it's my hearts and tanks are really quite passionate about it. But there's lots of inventive ways that you, as a recruiter, you can use to engage with people, whether it's using WhatsApp to send a video from the hiring managers or the team, individually to say, hi, we're really looking forward to welcoming you. This is what your office space is going to look like, or here's a packet of equipment we're going to be shipping out to you if you're going to be working from home and stuff, and keeping that dialogue going so you keep that person engaged before they hire. Because let's face it, it costs a lot of money to bring a new hire on board, just in terms of advertising, the cost of people's time, the process and everything else. So yeah, I think you're right. It is a challenge. And now we're all working remotely as well. It's even more difficult when you've got people who have actually arrived at their desk on day one, but they're sat in a remote location. It's hard. It's really hard.
But also what we were talking yesterday about, what about the people that they can't work from home? They have to, they're engineers, they're, dare I say it, HGV drivers. That was one of my nuggets of insight that I was going to be sharing with you today when I was preparing for this last week, that Emma Monday had to go to 5 petrol stations to fill up. So there's definitely a shortage. And fast forward a week, my God, the whole world knows about it. So I'm not giving any nuggets of insight to that one, am I? But there are people who have to be in the office. So have to be out of the office. So this whole home working and the focus on that side. There is a flip side to that, which we talked about yesterday as well. So, it's how do you almost have to have 2 separate plans, one for those people who are going to be working from home and one for those people who are actually going to go to a physical office or a laboratory or hopefully a HGV vehicle. So I think that was quite interesting yesterday as well. And it all ties in with that engagement side of things. And I think, as Emma's mentioned on the chat, authenticity is absolutely key. And I think trying to position yourself in and differentiate yourself from your competitors is really important too. But on that whole onboarding, it's engaging with them in different new ways. So like you said, getting the line manager to send a video, an online, drinks thing. I mean, it's not ideal. And hopefully we'll be able to move away from that. If yesterday's anything to go by, there's definite appetite for it. So I think it is, everybody's just thinking outside the box. How can we do this differently? We can't just recruit for that number of engineers now. I mean, engineering's always been, every time we've been in Manchester and the North, actually, they've discussed the last 5 years, skill shortages in the North, particularly on that side of things. So there's nothing new there. But I think people are using technology now to help, take away some of those pain points so that and automate things so that actually they can have more of a personal touch. And I think that was a big discussion yesterday as well. People, pick up the phone. People are now picking up the phone more rather than just emailing. They're organising video calls, etc. And I think there's been a big switch from that, really. So people are recruiting for potential was a big topic yesterday, and thinking beyond the induction as well. So when does the onboarding actually end? Is it when they finish their probation? Is it when they've, sign the contract? Is it after their first day? So I think, it's that whole educational piece for line managers as well. The onboarding now, because the retention is so important, needs to last. And I think that's a huge consideration for everybody.
I think there's quite a lot of nervousness about retention. There's certainly no signs of what has been called the Great Resignation as of yet. But I did a session a couple of weeks ago with John Tarrant from We Are DNA, who's superb, actually. If you want to watch it back, just go back onto our site and find it. And he was talking a lot about employee engagement in a general sense, but that transfers to recruitment and how we engage people through the hiring process too. And there are lots of new and inventive ways, but what they pushed out quite a lot of surveys through their clients and they were getting like a 98% response rate to their employee engagement surveys because everybody wanted a say. So I think it's about really clear communication, including people, involving people in the conversation around engagement, what's going to work and things. But it is still a challenge for us. So I guess it's quite good for everybody to hear, actually, no, it's not just me, everybody else has got the same experiences.
That's exactly what it was like yesterday. And so for the 2021 to 2022 survey that is currently live, that hopefully everybody will fill in. And as Emma's put in the chat, there's a chance of winning 50 quid's worth of vouchers as well. The number one priority is still D&I. And 26% of people that have filled in the survey so far have got infrastructure in place, policies in place for this. So things such as anti-racism campaigns, transgender training, mixed interview panels, unconscious bias training. Rachel ran a session yesterday in Manchester. That's one of the modules that we run in our capability training at the firm, and for hiring managers and also for TA teams as well. And so running those and partnering with a wide range of schools and universities, as I mentioned earlier, anonymous CVs, mentoring, and D&I attraction campaigns as well. So a lot of people, that's sort of number one on their agenda. And I also think people are running social mobility apprenticeship programs as well. So, looking at that side of things, looking at returner programs. They are introducing manager toolkits on diversity and training. And I think we've seen a huge increase in the demand for our unconscious bias training for hiring managers this year. As I mentioned earlier, particularly in this whole virtual world that we're living in, it's really important.
Do you want to tell me a little bit more about that, if you can? Because it's a perennial challenge around trying to, if not eliminate, then reduce unconscious bias as much as possible in the recruitment and selection process, especially for hiring managers.
I think it's about being conscious about the bias. That's what Rachel delivered a session yesterday, and it was very much about actually being aware and people in the room, getting everybody to admit, there has been a time when you thought, or Rachel was saying yesterday that having a bias against somebody. She said somebody that she used to work with, or she interviewed somebody who was called Tammy, but actually she was
the name thing. Yeah, I know the name thing.
She was bullied at school by someone called Tammy, so she immediately saw the CV and thought, "Ooh." But we all do this. So it's just being aware of it, and like I said, by doing things like having the mixed gender panels and raising your awareness of the potential pitfalls, really. I don't have all the details on that, and I can absolutely send them out to anybody who's interested, because that is Rachel's baby, should I say. And so she is actually running a session. She's with a client today, running a session, a live session, training session. So any more details about that, then we can absolutely send that out to you. I'm not completely clued up on that. I have to hold my hand up and say that, but it's available for those who are interested in it. And then number two, just very quickly on the 2021 results so far, has been candidate experience. And the TA functions, I'm sorry, I'm reading my notes here. The TA functions with the most capability were the ones looking hardest at their candidate experience. And the second most popular measure of success was after time to hire, was the candidate experience. And candidate engagement and unconscious bias and D&I awareness are identified as the skills most lacking in hiring managers. And that's the one that most impacts the candidate experience. So get booking into our training. See what I did there?
It's a great plug for the training, but it just underlines the importance of training and upskilling and supporting and mentoring and coaching hiring managers, especially. Because, we've acknowledged and we all recognise how really hard it is to find or reach the right people. And then when you actually do manage to engage them and get them to create a sense of interest and engagement in pursuing a career with your organisation, if that then all falls down when they either get to the ATS application page, or they don't hear back, within a fairly quick time period, or they get to interview and with the hiring manager and the whole thing sort of falls down, then it's a wasted effort. And none of us can afford to do that right now. We've got a collective responsibility. We take that seriously. We're in final stage testing that all new ATS candidate experience. which has a lot less friction to it. It's a lot friendlier, it's a lot more inclusive, it sets better expectation. And I think when we talk about candidate experience, it doesn't have to be all the really super jazzy stuff. It's just getting the basics right. It's frightening how many people apply for a job and never hear back. They've got no idea what the next stage of the process is. It takes a long time for people to come back to them. They feel forgotten about in the process, and they just feel like a number, not about a person. And I think sometimes when we're in this world of recruitment and it's very, very busy, sometimes it's possible to forget that there's individuals here who, they're people, and a career change is a massive deal for people.
It is.
It's probably one of the most important decisions you're going to make in your life.
And I think that, as you said, technology, people seem to be much more, they've certainly felt yesterday that everyone was much more open to adopting new technology to support them in those elements, to help them. So, moving away from some of the more clunkier systems, I think people, they're wanting to understand more. They're sort of more open-minded, they're not just sticking to what they've known and what they've used forever. And I think that understanding how the different technology that they use can help them to make their lives easier, it's a win-win. And I think that's where you guys can really help them with that, and it's helpful for us to get the insights from you on the other side.
Yeah, it is. I every year, or for the last few years, I've been a judge for the National Online Recruitment Awards, which it's a real honour and a privilege, but also it's a huge education. So I'm not revealing too much here. So this year I got to do large employers' career sites. So I had to review 79 of these. And there's some really, I know, a little bit jaded.
Have you done it?
Yeah, finished it and on time. Yeah.
Wow.
On Friday night. But I learned a lot, and it was interesting that those sites that straight away give me, they have purpose in terms of the organisation. In terms of their messaging, in terms of their promise, in terms of what they stood for. But just the basics of being able to, how quickly can I find vacancies? How quickly can I find information about the type of roles that I'm pursuing? How easy is it to connect? How easy is it to apply? Is there consistent brand? Some of these are not really complicated things, and actually end up discounting some really whizzy sites that were just really hard to navigate.
Yeah,
or
actually
confusing, or there's too many words. You can't underestimate things like the power of using imagery and videos of people. Going back to Emma's point about authenticity, I'm a huge believer in actually the power of people that already work within our organizations, and just they don't have to be beautifully crafted, but real videos of people that clearly do that job, talking about the experience they have, and being quite honest about, what's great, what's the challenge, and that kind of thing. And that really sells it.
Yeah. And actually in the survey, 50% of the respondents so far think that their career sites are good and very good. And 48% of career sites are over a year's, I think it was a couple of years old. So I think that's definitely a consideration. Another couple of things just to mention in terms of the findings from this current year has been succession planning. And workforce planning has hit the top 5 for the first time in the 11 years of the survey. So that's really interesting, because that's coming more into the whole talent management side of things too. So it's sort of, where's the line between TA, and talent management, and it all's kind of forming, one sort of really important function.
They do still they sit quite siloed still sometimes, don't they? Recruitment, TA, and HR. Is there any conversation about that? You mentioned onboarding, because sometimes that's split, and there can be a little bit of tension and frustration in terms of who owns it. Recruitment, I think, well, we've done all the hard yards here. We just want to make sure that person joins successfully and has a good experience, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's happening, well, on the talent management side of things, I think the role of TA has changed, actually, because a lot of people are describing their vacancies as talent attraction managers, rather than talent acquisition managers. And I think that it is changing, because as I mentioned, because of the succession planning, there is a real struggle to find external talent. So they're looking at internal talent pipelines. Is there anything they can do to improve, their EVP, their employer brand, that can help them to position themselves, competitively in the marketplace? And I think that's, that's what we're seeing, really. And I think, internal mobility, again, up there in the top 5 too, that just didn't really appear. If you look at the 2020 results to what we're seeing now, the priorities are still the same and the challenges are still the same. But I've totally contradicted myself there, because the priorities are one thing and the challenges are, a different one as well. So they're kind of interweaving with each other. But I think it's trying to work out what are the priorities and what are my challenges and how am I going to match those so that they help each other out, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I remember saying here, there's a huge focus on succession planning this year due to the external talent shortages. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I can say actually from our own experience at JobTrain over the course of the last year, I think obviously things were a little bit quieter and we just got involved in quite a lot of internal projects. But a big part of that was making sure that we had all the people in the right roles. And I've got to say that has made such a massive impact on our business. Really looking and making sure we've got the right people in the roles and early planning as to, right, now we do have that, where are the gaps? Can we develop people internally within JobTrain, which is always the thing we want to do, but very early on, right, who do we need for next year? And starting that process really early. And I think sometimes from what I hear is recruitment have a really hard job, because the hiring manager rings somebody up and say, well, I needed somebody 4 weeks ago because somebody's flight risk and they've left, or they're going on mat leave, or they're retired, or, I need somebody like yesterday. And that just doesn't give us enough time to properly plan and consider who we need and where we might find them.
Yeah, we did our internal mobility research report about 18 months ago. No, it wasn't, because it was before the pandemic. So about 2 or 3 years ago now. So that's on the site as well. And that's some fascinating insights in there as well. I think that the something else to mention, what was discussed yesterday as well, is that the barrier for entry needs to be removed as well. So people are using WhatsApp Apply. Never heard of it. Sounds brilliant. So opening up the entry criteria, removing CVs from the process. I mentioned, about just understanding what the relevant skills are rather than just the relevant experience. So it's looking at the transferable
or behaviours
skills.
or values, I guess, as well.
The competencies, which needs to be explored in the selection process. And I think the impact of the scarcity has meant that as recruiters, we have to up our game in every area of the TA life cycle. So we can't just be good, we need to be great. And, every touch point that the recruiter and the hiring manager has with that candidate, they need to be thinking, how can we make it better? How can we improve this? How can we make it better? And I think, it's a tough job at the best of times, but I think, it's got a whole lot tougher. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the results of the annual membership survey, but also what we're hearing kind of face to face yesterday in the flesh, as I kept saying. So I think that whole capability building piece, looking at the recruiters, looking at the hiring managers, delivering the best possible experience to the candidates, and how can you do that? Employer brand and your EVP is there to help you differentiate yourselves, and it's never been more important, more so than now, I'd say. And I think insight and measurement, to understand where you're losing the candidates, where are they coming out of the funnel in the recruitment process, and really actually taking the time to go back and have a look through it. That's what we're hearing a lot of people are thinking about doing and are needing to do as well.
It kind of blows your mind, really. So, we all know that recruiters have to wear a lot of different hats, but, this morning we basically touched on marketing, we're touching on data, we're touching on comms and engagement. And now, as Emma sort of pointed out, that talent management, or the skills around that, is a gap, or yet it's another skill that we within the recruitment world now need to acquire and learn and understand. Emma's also pointed out the importance of early careers and that kind of thing. So this is something not new, but it's really good to see the growth and development and success of apprenticeship schemes. Over and above, actually, degrees in some cases, which I think is a really positive thing. I think there's almost too much, this is just me, but I think it's almost too much emphasis based on academic achievement. You have an A-level, you get a degree, you get a job, but then people are entering the world of work without the relevant skills, experience, and that kind of thing. Whereas actually, if you've invested sort of 3 years of your time in bringing on an apprentice, then you've got an opportunity in a really positive way to shape and mold somebody and really give them a solid grounding, which will serve them well, not just in the company they work for. And we've got a couple of apprentices here, but when they leave you as well. And that's a really good thing, but it just underscores how much we within TA are now being asked to do. And there's another little stat from Emma here. The average ratio of external hires to internal hires is 70% external and 30% internal.
Yeah, that was in the internal mobility research that we did. I think people are also having to really focus on their soft skills now as well, Giles. It's not just about the hard skills; it's about the soft skills, and really looking at their kind of negotiation skills and how they are dealing, on those sides of, on that side of things as well. So I think, there's a lot going into the melting pot at the moment. So, your agility, your resilience, your adaptability, it's all needs to be taken into consideration, I think. So yeah, that's kind of what we, I'm just having a look at some of my notes here, hiring managers, turns out they don't know everything after all, And I think insight's absolutely key, everybody is, Emma's just put on here, stakeholder management. That's our, I think, up there with unconscious bias training. That's one of our most popular courses as well. So, there's, how the hell are they going to find the time to do these when they've got so many roles they're trying to fill and they're struggling to find the candidates? So, I mean, it's an incredibly challenging time in the TA space. I mean, it's completely different to this time 2 years ago. It's always been, it's a challenging role, whatever the market, I'd say, which is why we love it. But you're never, not kept on your toes in it. But I think it's important to look at the whole 360 rather than just specific slices of the pie. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with your comment there. The ability to say no is very difficult, for sure.
That's what they were saying yesterday as well. You've got to say no, put yourself first, think about your own well-being. Well-being has been a huge discussion as well. And I think, the pandemic has made everybody look at that and think more about their work-life balance and, when they want to be going into the office and what hours they're working. And, it's actually made it harder to switch off, I think, working from home, because you've got it, you need to separate.
Yeah, and people can't see you though, they just see their need, their vacancy. I was chatting with an old client of mine in the last couple of weeks and things, moved into a new role, no ATS, went from 35 to something like 49 vacancies in a week, and there's just that one person dealing with them all. It's all going through agencies, but yet the more the recs keep coming in, it's just like, well, actually, no. I'm setting an expectation with you that I can only manage so much. This is what I can do, rather than going, yeah, I'll manage it all, and then probably failing miserably and suffering a lot of stress in the process. Yeah. But I think it's good. This chat has been brilliant, Anna, because it for me, I've seen our world come together as a fantastic community. When people started losing their jobs, everybody came together, much like you did, to try and support people back into roles as quickly as possible. And I think it hopefully has given us a sense of community together. And it's good for people to know that they're not alone, that actually a lot of people are facing just the same challenges, just the same draws on their time, or just all these new requirements about upskilling and understanding and the skills that we need. So yeah, I think it's vital. Got a little question in here from Alex. Going back to candidate experience, how are we seeing people measure the success of candidate experience? Do you know what? If you can measure it, you can improve it. It's so important, but I don't know how many people do that. Is it usually through surveys, NPS scores, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it is. Emma, you can help me out on this one as well, because she's been doing a project on this at the moment. So hopefully Emma will be able to put something in the chat about this. But it is, as I said earlier, it's the second the way that people are judging their kind of EVP and employer brand. I think, yeah, a lot of surveys. I think surveys when they, after the process, I think is important. And also, I think keeping those conversational lines open as well. Sort of during, here we go. Emma's putting it in here now.
I'm totally with you on NPS, and it doesn't need to be complicated either. It can be simply, out of a score of 1 to 10, please rate your candidate experience. And secondly, all the experience you've had of the recruitment process. And secondly, give us a reason for this score. Just 2 questions, very easily. Capturing data is one thing. Actually doing something with it is quite another. Going back to the session we had with John a couple of weeks ago, it's just like we ran these employee engagement surveys, but a lot of organizations never did anything with the data. So capture it, but constantly monitor it. At the most basic level, put yourself through the candidate experience. You might even want to have a mystery shopper or something like that. These are lots of new and inventive ways to actually understand exactly what that feels like to somebody applying for a role with your organization. I think we've got another question in there, Anna. Right. Are there any tips for managing counteroffers? Yeah, brilliant one. You mentioned that these are massively on the rise. I know somebody quite recently, against my advice, accepted a counteroffer. It's a recruiter coming out on me. But yeah, any tips?
But I think that all sits in with the candidate experience as well. So I think, it's understanding, I think with the counteroffer thing, it's a very difficult one. And I'm afraid I don't have all the answers. Emma, I don't know whether you've got anything you want to add on this, but I think, the counter offers, what are people's drivers? Why are they going for that role? What's motivating them? Are they why are they being counter offered? Is it just on the salary? Is it on the working hours? Is it on the holidays? And as Emma's saying here, take them back to the reason, why did they apply for that role in the first place? And I think it's understanding why that's happening, and then trying to speak to the candidate to kind of go back to their initial motivators for applying for that role and why they wanted to leave their current role. Emma's saying here that the majority of counter offers end up leaving their organization after 6 months, which is really interesting.
You're right on, Emma. The person that I referenced before, it has an interview on Friday, and this is about 5 or 6 months since they accepted that counter offer. I think, perhaps the rise of counter offers, or people accepting them rather, is perhaps the fear of the unknown. It's like, okay, we still live in quite an uncertain period. Perhaps I'm better sitting tight and taking some more cash. But it's a short-term game. If you've started to consider applying for a role in the first place, there are drivers for that, and it's absolutely critical to understand.
Emma's put in here, get them to do our careers drivers survey. So that's something on our site, on our membership site.
Oh, stick the link in.
That the members can access. So I don't know whether that's and money isn't always the main motivator, and I don't think it is these days. And from what we're seeing,
it might be the clincher for people taking counter offers, but certainly not for looking for new jobs in the first place.
No.
Some people have handled COVID really well in terms of levels of employee engagement, culture, communication with people, and some really haven't. And that really does make the difference. And I think people now place a lot more emphasis on the culture, the purpose of the organization, what it looks to seek to achieve outside of the business itself, so whether it's like social initiatives, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm conscious of time, but Anna, this has been such a cool chat. It's been great.
Oh, it's been great. It's been good. I think internal mobility is one definitely that needs to be, considered. Because if you've got people working for your business now, that whole succession planning, as I mentioned earlier, in the top 5 for the first time in 11 years, that is a big consideration for people. So what we'll do is, if you could please encourage everybody to fill in the annual membership survey, and then we'll share the results with everybody as well when we have the juicy report. And I've got one from, hopefully you'll be able to print it off and have it actually, I've got one here, the job train advert in it. So it's a really meaty report.
Just open it on the page with the job train advert on.
Yeah.
No, joking.
I found it. This was not planned, I'd like to point out. There is a really meaty report. So I really would encourage anybody working in TA, if you have a moment to fill in the survey, we'd really love that, because it really helps us to shape what we do as a business and how we can support you better in your roles, moving forward.
And if this has helped, if this has resonated, join the firm. It's a fantastic organization, and you just get instant access to all of this wealth of help and support and connection, and the ability to just talk it through with your peers. It really does make all the difference.
And do find me on LinkedIn if you want to have any more information about the membership, and I can put you in touch with our membership engagement manager.
Perfect. I put Anna's LinkedIn profile earlier on the chat, so just scroll up a little bit, get it, cool. Connect with Anna, connect with Emma as well. And Anna, you've been a star. Thank you so much.
Oh, Charles, thank you for having me.
You must be tired after yesterday, but you're still here with a smile on your face.
I'm fine. Life in the old girl, yeah.
Shut up, we're the same age.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks everybody for joining.
If you are in and around Manchester next Wednesday, come down to IHR Manchester, have a chat with us, talk about recruitment tech, talk about job train, and come and join the panel discussion. There's a lot of other really good sessions, but obviously my panel discussion looking at, again, similarly what's happened in TA and how we need to change, how we need to evolve, and a bit about the future with some fantastic people. We've got the HR director from Sunrise, head of TA from My Dentist, and Michelle, who's the chief marketing officer from Visida. So she'll be looking at it from a D&I perspective. Amazing. Thank you. Have a brilliant week, and we'll see you very soon. Take care.